Hello, everyone, and welcome to PR Explored. I'm so happy to be back today. And I want to welcome everyone to PR Explored. It's a video podcast where we delve into trends and topics related to public relations. I'm your host, Michelle Garrett. I'm a public relations consultant and writer. And today I have a guest that I'm so excited to welcome, Karen Freeberg. She's a professor in strategic communication at the University of Louisville. And we have known each other for really years now, Karen, but we
Yeah.
are kind of talking for the first time. So this is really exciting. And I'm so happy you are my social media go-to. So I'm just happy to have you here today.
I'm honored to be here, Michelle. As you said, I was trying to think about how many years we've been connected. Like it was on Twitter X and then LinkedIn, Instagram, and it's been a minute, but it's been a good minute. So I'm really
Yeah.
grateful to be part of this.
Yeah, no, I'm so excited because like I said, we talk, but not we don't talk. We
Right.
talk on email and social media and things. And
Yeah.
of course, I really respect your opinion, and I'm really happy to have you here because there's so much going on with social media, and there's always been challenges between syncing up PR and social, and so we're going to get into all that.
Yeah.
But first, I would love to hear what you've been up to and just all your latest and greatest, whatever you would like to talk about for a minute.
Absolutely. Well, I'm really honored to be here, Michelle. So I'm at the University of Louisville. So my day job is essentially as a professor of strategic communications, and it will be 14 years in August, which has gone by very fast. So I teach everything from PR, strategic communications, social crisis, influencer marketing. And so that really keeps me pretty busy. But I also have another role at the university as the director of our student run agency called The Bird's Nest, which is in its third year. So it's really giving students the opportunity to get practice with social media, PR, influencer work, so they can get jobs when they graduate, because that's something that students are looking at. And but I'm also an author, so I've written several textbooks. One is in PR, and then the other is also strategic communications, and I have a personal branding book. So I like to write, even though I was a student that was always complaining about writing and that 5-page paper in classes. And now life has a funny way of, coming full circle where I'm writing 400-page books. But I also do some consulting and speaking in crisis communications, PR, and social. And when I'm not doing all of those different activities, I have a 4-year-old Australian Shepherd puppy who I'm trying to get him to be an influencer. Still working on that. I live in, I'm pretty much a coffee fan. So I pretty much run on coffee, and then I am active in Orange Theory and like photography, travel. So, but that's just a little bit about me, and I always tell my students, yes, professors are human beings. We do have a life outside of the classroom in our office. So that's a little bit about me. So I'm like, yeah, I try to also be like a modern day professor. I'm like, I'm not living in my office. I'm also doing all of these other things as well.
Sure.
You have to be in PR and social. You have to be active in the industry.
Sure. And I see that you do. I mean, I think you do a lot of speaking trips, and I've seen, you kind of travel kind of all over the world, really. I mean, I've seen, some of that on your feeds. And so that looks really fun. I mean, that seems like it would be exciting.
Oh, it's been awesome. I love traveling, and I've had a chance, and I'm very fortunate to have been able to go to some incredible places that I probably would have never been able to go otherwise. One of my favorite trips actually was a few years ago, where I went to Riga, Latvia, for the NATO Center for Strategic Communications Excellence social media conference. And I really was like, wow, I would have never gone to Latvia and otherwise, but it was a really amazing experience. And so it was a lot of fun. So I love traveling, I love speaking. And so I've been very fortunate and very grateful for the opportunities.
Yes. We will look forward to your next,
Yep.
your next journey, your next trip.
Yes.
So thanks for sharing a little bit, and tell us your dog's name, because we were just chatting about that before.
Yeah, so my dog's name is Mando. So I got him actually almost 4 years ago. And so It was right, again, a little bit after COVID. And I remember, like probably everyone else during COVID, I was catching up on various shows. And so I was watching The Mandalorian, which I'm obsessed with Baby Yoda. I thought, but I couldn't, his real name, I thought, no, he's always going to be Baby Yoda to me. So, but I was watching the movie and, the nickname for The Mandalorian was Mando. And I'm like, that is like a great dog's name. And so I made the decision to get, Mando, like right before Christmas in 2020. And the breeder asked me like, well, do you have a name for your dog? I'm like, oh yeah, Mando. So yeah, I am a big Star Wars fan too. So he's the sweetest dog. So I should have called him Zoolander though, because whenever I take pictures of him, he's like, I'm here for the camera. I'm like, really? You're just such a cheese ball. So, but he's really sweet.
That's a great name. I think it's I don't hear it very often, so I think it is a little bit unique, but yet people understand where it comes from, because of course I watched I watched The Mandalorian back then, so I get it right away. And we already see some folks weighing in, singing your praises, talking about. I'll put this up here. So we know that Dr. Freeberg, maybe I should be calling you Doctor.
Oh my gosh, I'm Karen. Well, thank you, Isabel. Yeah, no, I actually have multiple names now. Like I have people so I do in my classes, some of my students call me Dr. Freeberg, Professor Freeberg. I always like Professor Freeberg just because it reminds me of like Harry Potter. It's like Professor McGonagall. Even though I tell my students I'm hopefully not Snape. But I have a friend, Chris Strub, who's awesome. He does a lot of nonprofit social work. He calls me Dr. F. He's like, that's the one name that I get to call you. And then my students in the Bird's Nest now are calling me Dr. Free. So that's something too. So I will pretty much answer to pretty much everything. So.
Well, I just think that's very nice that we already have somebody singing your praises here. So, and I want to say, if people have questions as we get into this discussion, please post the questions. We'll do our best to answer the questions. If we don't get to them during the discussion, we'll try at the end. And yeah, we're gonna kind of jump in here, because the first thing that I want to talk about is I have been in PR for a long time. And I am curious how I feel like there's always, not always, but often a disconnect between PR and social. Sometimes a client will bring me in to help with both. Sometimes I'm just doing PR, and I'm definitely I know a lot more about PR than social. The social media experience I have is mostly for my own business and through my own experience. So I write LinkedIn posts and things for clients, but anyway, often they have a separate social media agency, team, person, what have you. And I just feel like sometimes it's hard to get the PR and the social working together, collaborating, being plugged into what each other is doing. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would say that this kind of hits home to me as even a professor, because my background in education is in PR, like from my undergrad at Florida, the master's at Southern Cal, to my PhD at Tennessee. So my background's in PR, but like with social, like was kind of woven within all of the different things that I was doing in terms of projects and what. And I feel that PR, like my foundation that I got in PR, really helped me really understand the how and why we use social media, because a lot of times people think, oh, like you just, like each of these different platforms, they kind of focus on the tactics. But I was always kind of looking at things like, okay, what is the strategy? What are the insights? What are the relationships, the community that we're able to do? What's our story? So I was kind of trying to interweave and, like the different principles of public relations within social. But when I actually started writing my textbook in social media, it was funny. I went out through the proposal, like with my publisher Sage, and they sent out the reviews and everything. And one comment, and this is kind of going full circle in a minute. One comment said, "What is a PR professor trying to do writing a social media textbook?" Because people thought, oh, social media falls under the wheelhouse of marketing, or it's completely separate. And I'm thinking, well, PR in many ways interweave, it basically aligns very well with social. There is a natural connection. So I thought, well, that's funny. And then years later, when I was writing my PR book, I got a comment saying, "What is a social media professor doing writing a PR book?" And I'm like, well, okay, I did really well with the branding, I guess, for the social media book. So, but I think, yeah, I mean, honestly, of the disciplines out there, I mean, PR and social really work together. And so I've kind of been brought in occasionally to be like, okay, speak PR language to social, social speak, to PR. And so I've kind of had to do a little bit of translation. But a lot of times people who are working in social now have that foundation in PR. So I do feel that from my friends that are in the industry, that is kind of their background. And so I think there's a lot of similarities, more similarities than differences between PR and social and working together. But I do feel that social does bring forth, like when you're working in PR, a lot of us have studied PR or have worked in public relations, whereas social, you're getting a wide range of different backgrounds. Maybe it's like someone started off in English and then moving into social because they're doing copywriting and content creation, or they are a videographer, kind of taking that storytelling from a visual standpoint. So there's a lot of different specializations with social, and it comes in with different backgrounds. So I think that could also be something too. But at the end of the day, I feel all teams should work together and collaborate.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I feel like content, I always feel PR, social, content all go together. And I think they are usually falling under the marketing umbrella. However, you can't be in silos and expect to, get the same results as you would if you were kind of syncing up and working together. So I'm always trying to get, people to like talk to each other. And for some reason, I feel like they're just sometimes, I don't know, I feel like sometimes people disregard social, but sometimes they disregard PR. Sometimes it's either way, or sometimes both, I guess. So.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Like, I love the comments that people think, oh, I mean, I have so much respect for the individuals in both PR and social that work tirelessly, that they're doing the campaigns. And I tell them every day, I'm like, I thank you for what you're doing, because I'm able to bring and talk about your work in my classes to inspire the next generation. So everyone that's working in practice, I really respect what they're doing. But it is frustrating when you see in social, like, if there is something that goes wrong, everyone's like, oh, it's the intern's fault. And I'm like, well, no, like, no, it's not. Or they think it's easy, or anyone can do it. It's not hard. Or you don't need to go to college to go and practice and be part of social media, which I'm like, okay, there's many different pathways to go into social, but, not kind of, we can kind of leave off the, negativity there. But then PR, it's like, well, you just send a press release and that's what you do. Or you host parties with celebrities or event planning. I'm like, well, those are areas that are, very much specialized, but there's so much more to that. So I think a lot of times people kind of are like, I think both social and PR have different challenges of perception. I always find it interesting that people think that what we do in PR is like Scandal with Olivia Pope. I'm like, I love her outfits, but no, I mean, we do crisis communication and management, but not to the level. Or all we have to do is post a selfie, and it will go viral like Emily in Paris. And that's social media influencer. So I'm like, okay. So there's a lot of public perception, but I feel that, like in terms of being discounted, people are like, oh, well, you do that. And I'm like, but I think every profession has something like that, but it's, I think we have to kind of be our best advocates and spokespeople by what we're doing, the actions and value that we basically bring to the table. So.
Yeah, well, in B2B PR, which is what I kind of specialize in, we don't, I'm not really planning parties, That's not really, I mean, I would, if they have an event and they want me to weigh in, I certainly would, but that, no, that's not really what we're focused on. And the other thing I would say that I think about sometimes is that PR, and this, of course, it's not my first year in PR, but PR has been around before we had social, before we had content marketing. And so PR pros have been doing similar, things for a long time. And so that's why I always feel like those with kind of a solid strategic communication, PR background, whatever you want to call it. I know different colleges call it different things now.
We're all about rebranding and naming something different. That's
it's so
pretty
confusing.
much guaranteed. Yeah.
because when I studied, it was journalism. So we was PR within journalism, and they don't have that program anymore, really, where I went to school either. So, but
Well,
anyway, the point is that I feel like that background gives you a very well-rounded,
oh,
curriculum in most
mm,
cases, I guess, to tackle positions within any of these types of fields.
oh, 100%. And I mean, when you're talking about rebranding too, I think, yeah, as I said, my background's in PR, but I actually, when my role at Louisville is a professor of strategic communication, and I can tell you, Michelle, this was back in 2011 when I basically got the position, and I had some PR faculty members in my community that were like, they thought that was like the kiss of death for me. They thought, oh my God, Karen, strategic communication, like, no, it's not going to know what you're doing. It's not a PR position. And now everyone like that I know of is rebranding to be Department of Strategic Communications with PR and advertising below it. And I'm just kind of like, okay. So yeah, I mean, it's all about blending together, but you're right. I mean, we do content, we understand media training, and that's so important now with influencers. Like I did a study a couple of years ago now with two colleagues. One is Guy Golan from TCU, and the other is Brian Smith, who's now at Ole Miss. And we actually did a study looking at influencer relations and how it really is kind of this new wave of media relations, but you're working directly with influencers and building those relationships and kind of negotiating contracts, but also deliverables and all of these different brand trips and experiences, activations. And I'm like, well, some things just evolve, but they still kind of stay the same in principle. So there's a lot of traditional skill sets that PR, like whether you're in the classroom or in practice, that could immediately shift over very easily to social. It's just called different things. But I think what's helped me in communicating these principles, with students has been Gina Dietrich's PESO model. Like, it really kind of gives you a full understanding, like, oh, here's the, media PR earned, kind of components, but here's, okay, how does social wave into it? So it's really a nice graphic that kind of illustrates all of the different components. So props to Jeannie for that. Thank you. And I'm a visual person myself. So I'm like, yes, this is fantastic to have as a resource. So
yeah, that kind of plays right into, the next question I was going to ask, which was what can we do to kind of better collaborate and break down some of the silos? And I use that PESO model graphic whenever I do a talk. Because it just helps people visualize it, because I think sometimes it's not the same when you're just trying to explain it. When you show them, it makes a lot of sense. And yes, we love Jenny, and yes, Jenny has been here to talk about PESO, because I'm a big fan of it too.
Oh my gosh, it's been both of my books. I'm just like very grateful to her. But yeah, in terms of breaking down silos, I think in any kind of situation, whether you're going into a completely different industry or situation or even discipline, I think understanding the lingo within that area is crucial. So I think on both sides, it's kind of like going to another country. Like, you want to know the customs, you want to know the best practices, the etiquette, and really fully immerse yourself and say, okay, I want to be able to communicate and make a good first impression. So like, they don't completely be like, okay, we're keeping our silo walls up, but like, oh no, you're besties, let's work together. And so I find, in what I work with social teams, understanding what certain terms that they use and what are different practices, like knowing the difference, for example, between listening and monitoring. It's one of those things where I'm like, okay, this is, the lingo and the practices, whatever. But then I think on the social side, understanding like, okay, what are the goals and objectives and key things that PR needs to know? Like, how do we kind of work together? So I think like that's the biggest thing, is kind of understanding lingo. And I speak this from experience, because with my degrees, like especially in my PhD program, I had a cognate area in marketing. And so I remember when I did a fellowship at GM, as part of the Planck Center Fellowship for Educators, that was one of the best experiences that really allowed me to kind of have this bridge and breaking down silos. I was technically part of the PR team, but I also had to work with social and marketing. And they kind of look at me like, okay, Karen, you're like our Venn diagram in the middle. Like you kind of have all of these different areas. Now we'll go talk to the teams. I'm like, okay. And so understanding the lingo and asking questions like, oh, what are your metrics? Oh, this is what you're looking for. And I remember there's this one guy who was in charge of GM's like database marketing. And I was having questions for him and he just sat back and he was like, I don't get this. Like you're in PR and you actually understand like what like I'm doing here. And I'm like, yeah, because I want to, see how we can work together and not have silos. And it was like, okay, cool. So, but yeah, everyone has the language, within their field. And if you're able to, understand it and make the effort and saying, okay, if we're working together, let me know what your background is. How do I work here? So I kind of equated kind of like, going to a different place, speaking language, trying out the cultures and just being seen, hey, why can't we be friends? Like I always seem like have that song playing in my mind. Collaborating to kind of break down the silos. Like we're friends here. Let's work together.
Yeah, we shouldn't be territorial because I have seen that happen in both cases. I'm not, I mean, it happens. I mean, people are again humans and it happens, but it doesn't really help when people are so like, I just, again, no one is trying to encroach on anyone else's territory. It's just trying to make, do more for the organization, the company, the cause, whatever it is, Yeah.
And I think that does, I mean, there's a lot of territories. I mean, everyone kind of says, well, I mean, there's a big part of like who owns social. And I actually cover that in my textbook because if you talk to someone in marketing, it's like well, social falls under our wheelhouse and same with PR and journalism. And then, like there's people that are like social is its own entity. So it's like who rules. And so I think instead of like treating it like a Game of Thrones kind of situation where everyone's fighting with each other, like, can we just come into harmony and be like with the Avengers, different perspectives, all coordinating, showcasing our expertise, but then learning from each other. And so that's kind of where I'm at. But yeah, there's a lot of territorial, elements, in terms of like who wants to be the expert in these various fields, who is doing the best campaigns or who has the most. And I'm like, life is too short. Can we all work together? Because if we spend their energy on working together, we'll do great things. But if we spend too much focusing on territory issues, we're not going to get everything done. So
yeah. I think we can borrow from each other. Those are the examples that I bring up sometimes is that, like if you're in PR, maybe the content team has, an article that you might be able to repurpose for earned media or, maybe something we're working on in PR would be repurposed on social. Of course, we want all of our earned media coverage to show up on social with the tag to the publication and the journalist who wrote the story or, the podcast that aired the episode or whatever. So I feel like that is just like, that's just table stakes. I mean, that has to be happening and it doesn't always happen though. So that's why I'm like, I don't know sometimes how to get in there,
Well, and I think too, that's kind of one thing that I've tried to do with our student agency with the Bird's Nest. Like,
that's so great. I mean, that's just
it's so much fun. I'm so inspired with the students, but we've kind of taken a model where there's different, because this is the Bird's Nest, we have different shell teams. The students were very excited about that, like little shells. I'm like, okay. They have different areas, but like we kind of, instead of having like a top down approach, we almost have kind of viewed it as like an equal kind of like setting. Like I was, basically revisiting King Arthur's Court and Camelot. And so I was like, round table that we're all able to bring in different things together. And that I think it's important for us to, be able to respect and kind of entwine, the different perspectives. But I do tell the students, like, yes, you may have your different roles, but you're going to be on each other's teams and you're going to have to learn and collaborate and work together. So there's times when our operations team is working with a content team and then our strategy team is working with outreach on something. So they're able to understand not only the different functions, but also the different roles and backgrounds of the students. Because I think the more experience and insights you're able to get and to be brought to the table here, better ideas happen, more integrated perspectives are able to bring forth. And then you might be able to kind of say, hey, we're able to address some early warning signs or some things that might have been missed if we didn't have these individuals as part of. So I'm trying in my own little like role, here at the University of Louisville, try to build that and kind of encourage the students to kind of say, we don't need silos. We need to kind of work together. So.
Yeah, that's so valuable. I was going to mention that when you brought it up, earlier, the student led agency. I just think, wow, would that have ever been a cool thing when I was going to school? Because that's you
Same.
need some real world experience, and
Oh,
that's I
yes,
think
sir.
having a child that already graduated and when going to college next fall, I'm like, it's so important because I think as parents we see the need for the
Oh,
child to be able to get a job when they
yes.
graduate. And if you don't
Oh,
have any experience, actually like understanding what it is you studied, I don't know how that.
it's challenging. Yeah, no, I really wish that I had something like that in
Mhm.
school. And I think that we had some professional, opportunities. But I was a track and field athlete, so that, both at Florida and Southern Cal, and so there was only so many things that I was able to do. Besides,
Mhm.
or the way that I describe this with my students is, I used to throw things for a living. I don't now, but yeah, the expectations, for PR, and if students want to go into PR, social media roles. I mean, there was one job that I saw that wanted like 20 years of social media experience. I'm like,
Mhm.
well, I don't even know,
20
like,
years.
yeah, 20 years and like all of these different roles. And I'm like, you're looking for, I don't, not even a unicorn at this point.
I
But I think, I think it's important. Yeah. I mean, and I'm speaking to this as even a textbook author. Like, there's some things that textbooks don't teach you always. It's like, oh, okay.
Mhm.
I mean, I try to provide as much real world applied work as possible in my classes, but nothing beats experience. Like, oh, well, okay, this is something that I get to, talk to the students about. Here's a professional, lesson, to, work with clients or work, and managing different teams and stuff. But
Yeah.
having that experience in those stories is very powerful. So yeah.
Yeah, I had to get mine actually working at an agency. I think that was the best, like, actual
Oh,
education I got before I
yes.
went out as a consultant and just learn how to, like, work with multiple clients and juggle multiple projects and
Yes.
campaigns and,
And drink lots
it
of
just
coffee.
yeah, yeah, I mean, it's really a lot if you don't have anything. I mean, internships would help, I guess, but anyway, we can
Yeah.
get on a whole
Oh, that's
tangent
another
about.
conversation. Yeah.
I love to talk about that because I have a lot of thoughts about that. But I just want to say that I love what you're doing, and I think that I think it's really important. So
It's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of
yeah,
fun.
yeah, and
The
I'm sure those students are really much better prepared.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm very proud. Like, we're in our third year. We have a 100% employment rate, which I tell the students I have a method to my madness. I inspect what I expect with the students, but I also tell them I kind of operate more like a coach. And I feel like in mentorship, of both in PR and social, like, I think we need more of that in the industry.
Hmm.
So I tell them that, they're the ones reaping the rewards for getting jobs and opportunities, promotions. And so I'm just here in the sidelines cheering them on, so, but it's been very rewarding.
That's so nice. I just love that. I can feel that you're proud of them, and I mean I love that.
Yeah.
Well, so let's shift gears a little bit and talk
Okay.
about just the current state of social media. Maybe I should just put the dumpster fire.
Yeah, or the dog I'm surrounded by fire and think this is fine. Fine. Yeah. Yeah.
You had shared a post. They had done a study. It analyzed 21 million posts from more than 1 million accounts across 8 social media platforms. And so we can talk about some of those findings, but just feel free in general to,
Yeah.
share your thoughts.
Well, it's never dull working in social. I mean, I like the thing I liked about PR when I was studying is that you're doing something new every day. And then social, you're like, well, times that by 1,000 and realize that things that were okay one day are gone the next, or one campaign is hot right now. And then the next day it's like, oh, that's so last week. So I think it's very interesting to see how like social has definitely evolved. Like, the platforms have evolved. I mean, I think, for example, that LinkedIn is having its creator era. And if you would have told me a couple of years ago that LinkedIn would be this, I'd be like, the briefcase app? I don't know about that, So, I mean, it's surprising. And I think that it has different lifespans and changes, et cetera. I still feel, with even the state of social, I try to look at things from a balanced perspective. obviously there's lots going on. There's a lot of things, a lot of challenges, a lot of issues, but at the same time, I am very much an optimist where I do still see good. I still see the amazing people that I've been able to connect with it thanks to social media and the opportunities that it's afforded me. I would not be where I'm at today without it. So I'm always forever grateful for the different platforms and allowing me to kind of talk and help my students and be able to afford opportunities for them, but also myself. So in terms of, the state, I think too that it'll be interesting to kind of see what happens this year, like in terms of, what are the trends, because I think that we're kind of seeing kind of this shift, for different practices across the different platforms. Some platforms are getting more attention, more resources allocated to it, but then we're also seeing the different sub areas like influencers and creators are shifting a little bit. Long form is becoming more popular with the rise of newsletters and podcasting. But I still feel that social has a very strong play of, still connecting people, sharing stories, and being able to kind of build opportunities across the board.
I have to ask a question that I just wrote down because I struggle with this and I would love to hear your perspective. Influencers versus creators.
Yes.
What's the difference?
What is the difference? So an influencer can be a creator and a creator can be an influencer. I would say definition wise, an influencer is anyone that can motivate someone to take an action based on what they've said. And an influencer doesn't necessarily have to be just only on social media. It can also be someone who may just be your everyday person who has a very strong level of expertise, but they're able to communicate authentically across the board. And Jason Falls, who's a good friend of mine, has a great podcast and book called Win Influence, and kind of talks about, instead of influencer marketing, he says it's influence marketing. So he argues that you can be an influencer regardless of having a social media platform. So I would say influencer is basically someone who has the ability and power to motivate individuals to take action based on what they've said or created or whatever. A creator is known for what they like. They have to be able to create, whether that are video clips, those are, podcasts, written form, they're creating something of value that exciting and important for their community. So a creator can be very influential based on what they've said, but there is there is kind of that Venn diagram where you can be an influencer and creator. And I kind of look at this is kind of an OG example. Casey Neistat, is one. It's like he created very powerful vlogs, so that was his medium, but he became very influential in the space regarding that. And then you also see creators, like the influencers right now, like Alex Earl, kind of shifting towards where she is becoming an influencer with these brand deals with Sports Illustrated, Carl's Jr. But there are some that basically we just want to stay in the creator space, because the influencer term in many ways in the industry has kind of been viewed as a negative thing, like, because of Fire Festival and all the cancel culture kind of incidents. And that is basically where, for the PR person, it's like, crisis, situations, when you think you've seen it all, wait, there's always something to talk about. But so those are kind of the main differences that I see between an influencer and a creator.
Yeah, I feel that there's kind of a little bit of an ick factor sometimes with both of the terms, even though I think some of us probably, probably do create, but don't call ourselves a creator because we maybe don't understand. And it just sounds like, I don't know, like, again, it's kind of like calling yourself an influencer, I think, too. It's like, do we call ourselves a creator, or could we let other people put that? I mean, like, how does that work? Like,
no, I mean, I think you're a great creator, Michelle. I mean, you have a podcast, you create, content. I mean, absolutely. I view, like, what I do is, I do create content. In many different formats, and I think it really depends on, like, the format your content is basically packaged in, because there's some people that are very skilled in videography. And for me, I'm like, I can draw like a stick figure, and then I know my way around the camera just enough to get myself into trouble. But for me, writing is where I'm like, okay, I got this, so I was my blog for years, and now I have a newsletter and I have my books. And so, and this is speaking from someone who, I did not like writing 5-page papers in college. So again, I think my professors are laughing at me, at this point, like, full circle now, Karen. And I'm like, so
Did you say you started a Substack?
I did, yeah. So about a week ago,
Okay.
I started a newsletter because it was based on a student suggestion. Actually, I was in Nick Cicero's social media strategy class at Syracuse University. So Nick and I like go back too, and he's like an OG analytics Twitter icon. Like he is the best. So I talked to him and his class about a week ago because they're using my social media textbook, and a student, reached out and was like, well, have you ever thought about writing a newsletter that kind of talks about the current events? You like writing. And she said, I think it would be very valuable to students. And a light bulb, came off. I'm like, well, why haven't I done this already? And so it's called the Carefree Newsletter. And the name comes from a good friend of mine. Her name is Angela Pratt. She's a professor at North Carolina. And we were in grad school together at Tennessee. And she just said, Karen, you're very, easygoing. You have this good work-life balance, just very carefree, but it kind of takes my first name and last name and puts it together. I'm like, oh,
that's cute.
Yeah. So it's been fun. It's been fun. I like building things, honestly, Michelle. I never really like study like entrepreneurship or everything, but I love building and growing things. So I figure it's kind of a passion project that I want to work on. And so slowly but surely it's growing. So I'm excited.
I think trying new things just keeps things interesting, right? I mean, when you've been doing something for a while, it can, you got to kind of keep challenging yourself, pushing yourself a little bit to, try new things.
I feel the same way. Yeah. Well, and I also feel too, I have a group that keeps me very accountable in that realm, like with students. Like I do with my role and speaking and consulting and working, if I'm telling them to do things in the classroom or, with the Bird's Nest, they kind of look at me like, okay, yeah, Dr. Freeberg has done an audit before. Oh yeah, she has done a presentation, for this company. So I kind of have to practice what I preach. And so we actually started a newsletter for the Bird's Nest. The students were very passionate. Our PR team actually wanted to do that. They wanted to create content and value. And so I thought, well, I want to encourage them to do what they need to do, but I need to follow suit too and practice again what I preach. So
yeah.
And then what's hot and what's not. Gosh, I
want to talk about YouTube. For sure, because I see a lot. I see LinkedIn being mentioned, and then I see a lot about YouTube. And of course, we could talk all day about Twitter/X. We could talk about TikTok, Instagram. I mean, but
I still
think about YouTube. Oh yeah.
This is my hot take. I mean, I still will do the Twitterbird because that was like the best. That's the best social media icon. So sorry, Elon, Twitter X. I mean, so for my book, I have to basically change that from Twitter X, but I love the Twitter logo bird. So rest in peace. But yeah, like in terms of the platforms, like I think, especially as you said with YouTube, with the TikTok ban that happened for like 12 hours and now it's back or kind of like in the midst of like to be determined. I mean, with YouTube Shorts, videos, I mean, I think that was, everyone thought that Instagram would be the benefit of the TikTok ban, but I think YouTube, is definitely and that's where a lot of people are, gravitating to. But I think in social media, it really will come down to who's shifting, the platform dynamics, but then also who's shaping culture. Where do people go? And one person that I would recommend maybe following to kind of understand subcultures and cores and influencers, creators, where people are going. His name is Matt Higgins. He's at 1 Hour Media. No, One Blue. Okay. I'm having a professor moment here. Like I will make sure to share the link. But he's in Philadelphia, and Matt is awesome. And he really does some great work with his agency on looking at the different subcultures and cores, in social and kind of where people are going. Because we know as certain groups go to one platform, brands and everyone else follow. So it's always a life cycle.
Yeah. And I think it's hard if you're advising clients on where to spend time because, obviously with B2B, LinkedIn's kind of always been the place. So that's not so in question. But I think if you're doing consumer PR, that would definitely be a question. It's like, well, where should we go? So, and I don't know that we know the answer.
No, it's it's always a question because some people are saying, well, we need to go here. And I'm like, well, why? It's like, well, because everyone's going. I'm like, are your customers going? Are your audience members? And my rule of thumb is with any platform is to always claim your username, like regardless if you're on a platform,
Okay.
like
That's a
that's
good tip.
yeah,
Yeah.
because there's been a history of like cyber squatting where there's people that like if a new platform comes on, they cyber swap on, let's say the Apple handle or the LinkedIn handle, and they just basically like hold it hostage or ransom, until the companies are like, okay, we'll pay you X amount of dollars. And so that really, is something that a lot of brands are kind of, focused on. So, but yeah, I mean, it's always constantly changing, in terms of the platforms and everything.
Yeah, because my advice to clients has always been don't bite off more than you can chew, because if you try to be on 10 platforms, you're probably not going to do them all well. And then there's nothing worse when you're trying to get media attention for a client and they go to the social media platforms and they haven't posted in 6 months. That used to be a thing. I don't know if it's as much of a thing anymore because, as you said, if you're going to claim their handle, claim their username, and then not, but they might not post. So maybe we have to throw that out a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's something too. Like, I think it's important, I'm very transparent, like about saying, yeah, I'm just claiming this as my handle. But for me, I kind of look to see where people are going. I mean, and yeah, there's only so many hours in the day and so much coffee you can consume basically to keep up with all the platforms and everything. So, but I kind of go and kind of see where my audience and communities are kind of located, where I need to be in terms of the conversation. So I've been spending a lot more time, like I would say, on Instagram and LinkedIn, just because with my students and, engaging in the community, they're definitely on Instagram. But then on LinkedIn, I get a breadth of everything. I'm still on, Twitter X, in various conversations there. And then TikTok, I'm there basically kind of getting inspiration and case studies of like which brands are doing some incredible work, which ones are like, oh, there's lots of crises that I can talk about or what not to do.
Right.
Or I tell my students, fully embracing being an adult when you're getting excited about cleaning products and appliances. So that's key level consulting. So
What about reporters? Do you have any sense of where reporters are now? Are they still kind of on Twitter X? Are they migrating? What do you think? I mean, I hear different points of view on that too.
yeah, I think there's, it's interesting. I'm trying to think of the friends that I have. I mean, yeah, I definitely think they're, I think they're still present on Twitter, but then some of them have migrated to Threads. So they've kind of gone that route, or they've kind of done more saying like, okay, I'm going to go on LinkedIn. So it really depends, I think, on who you ask, because there's some people that still realize, yeah, breaking news is still happening on Twitter X. And I know in our local kind of media market in Louisville, like when we've had all these weather reports, like people are like still going to X. They're not necessarily going to Instagram and Threads because they really are like, okay, I just want the news. And so I'm going to go. I mean, I think it's just been like so ingrained in our brains that Twitter's where you go for up-to-date real-time news. But when I've seen other trade publications, I've seen, other publications like Adweek, Ad Age, eMarketer, PR Week. I see a lot of those publications go directly and just publish on LinkedIn. I would say the one that I haven't seen a lot of traction has been Facebook with the report.
Yeah.
That's been like the one I'm kind of like, interesting.
That's an interesting one because I feel like, a lot of people want to leave Twitter/X, but again, like if you're in PR, I feel like you kind of have to stay there. But then Facebook is there because of the groups. I think a lot of people have groups on there that they don't want to give up.
Yeah, I actually started a Facebook group actually for social media professors, and we're about 2,300 worldwide. And so so it's grown. And so some people were like, well, we should have a Twitter account. We should go on TikTok. I'm like, I don't know about TikTok, but LinkedIn is another option. But then there's others that like they told me, they're like, that's the one reason I keep coming into Facebook is to be part of this group. So I think groups is definitely a big part of the reason. So I think you're getting it. You're with the platforms. All the platforms are stealing from each other, so that's always fun to watch. It's like I always feel sorry for Snapchat. I'm like, man, you guys got a lot of your stuff stolen and integrated. But it's one of those things, that I think is something that we have to kind of be aware of. But then I think every place has a function, so if it's Facebook groups, and then Instagram is like storytelling and content creation, LinkedIn is connections, content, Twitter is breaking news. So I think what you're seeing is this, kind of role of purpose and, reason, for going to certain platforms. And then Pinterest seems to also kind of get, ignored a little bit, that they actually, I love what they're doing with their positivity messaging, and you can go down the rabbit hole with looking at some fabulous recipes on Pinterest, speaking from experience. So
that's one I don't visit very often. I think I'm pretty sure I have an account, but I haven't done anything over there for a while. So maybe I need to.
Yeah, you just need to walk a couple hours, Michelle, and just say, I'm going to go deep dive into Pinterest. And then you'll wake up and be like, wait, 3 hours have passed.
Well, you make a good point about them borrowing from each other, because the thing that always got me was how LinkedIn, started with the reactions, and then trying to like encourage people to share like their everyday, like human content. I mean, but I feel like I always felt like I wish it would have just stayed what it was, because I do feel like we can go other places to get, somebody's, political views or whatever. I don't need that on LinkedIn necessarily, unless it's to do with business, which of course intertwined sometimes, but
no, I agree. Well, I kind of lost count on how many people are going to do stories. You had that kind of, moment with LinkedIn. I'm like, okay, no, LinkedIn, like, we're not doing that. It's cute, but no, we're not. And then Twitter had fleets, and I'm like, how are we going to do this? No. And then, I think that platforms need to realize they are there for a purpose. It's very tempting to get, oh, we need to do this ad, or we need to do this feature. We need to be like these other platforms. It's very, kind of like motivated to try to do what everyone else has done. But as you said, Michelle, like being true to who you are, like their overall kind of ethos and like purpose, for a platform, I think it's really important. And you've seen some platforms that have kind of strayed away from that, and they've lost users, or they've gotten their works, or their features absorbed in other capacities. And so it is kind of a lesson of, kind of staying true to your mission, or, risking, basically alienating the core group that got you there.
Yeah. I think that's a good point. Another thing I try to remember and encourage clients to think about is, where is their audience spending time? That's where they need to be focusing. So even if I think sometimes, when you work in communications or marketing or whatever, you want to call the umbrella that holds PR and social and all of that, sometimes we have our own preferences for certain platforms, and that doesn't really matter, because if our audience isn't there, we're kind of wasting time, even if that's where we like to be. I mean,
100%. Yeah, no, I do shock my students when they find out that I have a TikTok, and I'm like, well, I am a professor that teaches social media and writes books, so yes, I will be on that. And they're like, well, but I tell them I always love, with being where your audience is. One of my audiences are students. And so I'm able to kind of I want to kind of see who are they looking for influencers? Who are they gravitating to for brands? Always surprising. And as the years go on, I clearly realize we are in a different generation. So but I mean, I always, I feel too, it's like you're able to understand the context. You're able to understand what this trend sound means. And so it's interesting with some of the students, they talk about trending sounds or gifts, I took my students who are directors of the Bird's Nest out to dinner, and they wanted to do a TikTok kind of trending sound from White Chicks. And they're like, well, Dr. Freeman, you know this. And I'm like, well, first off, I remember when the movie came out 20 years ago. So yes. And two, obviously I know that, the trend that we see here. So that was fun, being able to relate and have relevant context in that.
Yeah. I mean, we've kind of covered this question. So, I mean, I just wanted to put it up there because we were already talking about it. I'm like, well, we just kind of went right into it. But yeah, I think it's just, you will have to think about, where's your audience spending time. So if your audience hasn't left a platform, you probably need to stay present on that platform. Again, I think it's much more complicated for B2C than it is for B2B, because LinkedIn's got to be the place for B2B.
Well, I think too, there's kind of ebbs and flows. I mean, that's why I think it's a lifespan, for social. You don't want to completely abandon your account, or deactivate it completely. because you never know what's going to happen. I mean, social is such a dynamic industry that one thing could be happening now, but then what happens? And it's kind of like, I think with the Twitter X alternatives, so many people were ready to jump on and, go on other platforms, which fine, great. That's awesome. But then, a few weeks go by, a few months, and they realize, okay, I can't sustain this. It's not the same.
Right.
Back, so I think what companies need to do is really in 2025 is really listen, to where your audience is going, hearing the talks, read up on the industry. What are the trends that you need to be aware of? Read reports, but then also read the room. Like, what are people concerned about? What are they talking about? Where they're going, and I think more time listening to where and having a conversation, but we'll be more informed and more effective in where we need to go is spend our money, like for ads, go and formulate strategies, reaching out to the key people. But sometimes we're just so out of the gates, like to kind of bring up a Kentucky Derby, reference. We're so out of the gates. We're like, oh, wait, I should have thought about this further, maybe not sometimes it's okay to hit the pause button and take a step back in this day of rapid evolution and challenges and constant change and just say, where do we want to go here? How is this going to look 5 years from now, a month, 2 months, a year down the line? And just take a moment of pause.
The shiny object syndrome is so prevalent in what we do. And I just feel like sometimes it's so much better to just kind of maybe not be the first adopter, the early adopter. Maybe you need to take a breath and kind of watch and see what's happening before you jump too far into a new social media platform.
And that's kind of sometimes too in PR, it's kind of like, we kind of advise clients, like, let's think about that. Can we hit pause? Can put a pin in it? Just kind of gather all the information ahead of time, because it is very tempting because everyone wants to be first and have that 15 seconds of fame to go viral or whatever. But yes, that will last only a certain amount of time, but you have to look at the long game. So many people on social media think short, there's bloop, have a moment. But then down the line, it's like, do we remember what went viral in 2021? Well, maybe from the history books, and if you want to go down that realm for memes and trends, etc. But at the now it's like, I feel that I love using Pixar, references. So I use, of course, Ratatouille and The Incredibles, because I'm obsessed with Edna Mode and Anton Ego. And it's like, well, that's in the past. It distracts from the now. And I feel like that's kind of where people are at. It's like, okay, well, that's so last minute. What do you have that's new? Kind of like Anton Ego. What does the PR social media professor have that, or professional have that's new? And it's like this constant feed. And so sometimes you might be like, I'm going to take a moment and appreciate, the situations, this current state, and see how I can navigate, effectively and have a long lasting impact rather than just 15 seconds of, viral fame. Necessarily lost. It could open up opportunities, but not for everybody.
I think there's just I love to stop and think, because I just feel like everybody's always on this hamster wheel of we got to do this right now, we got to go. And really it's kind of more of the long game, and it's also your own media. Back to Peso for a minute, you've got to focus on your own website, your own media, and then I think you add on, because even from a PR perspective, if a client doesn't have an up-to-date website, that's the first thing I'm probably going to tell them to do, because if you start getting reporters' attention, they're going to go to your website, they're going to go to your social media. So you want to make sure that that's kind of, looks the way you want before you attract attention to it.
Also, I mean, reminding people, it's like a marathon, not a sprint. And if you have a full-blown effort of going 1,000% per, all the time, you're going to burn out. There's so much burnout in the industry. And so you just have to kind of take a moment to say, what do I want to spend? How do I utilize my time effectively? And so I actually, on my phone, I have blocks of how much time I'm going to spend on social. I do a little bit every day. I kind of try to embrace some of the practices that I did as a student athlete, because you're not going to be working out 24/7, the day before the Olympics. I mean, you're not. So you're doing a little bit every day in preparation. But I'm already kind of seeing this in the wave of PR and social media professionals and professors who want to become the AI expert. And I'm like, okay, you're going to burn, I'm really glad that you're enthusiastic about these topics. It's changing, it's going forward, but you have to look at how will you be able to sustain this? Will you have the energy to?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think some people will, absolutely. They're passionate, they love it, but I think others are going to get burned out just because it's the pressure of kind of constantly being on could take a taxing. So it's about having balance. I think that's what companies should also have here too, not just for themselves, but also for their employees, in who are working in PR and social, to have that balance of understanding, like the dynamics. And I think social media especially has matured quite a bit, even though it's constantly changing the dynamic. It has matured in some respects compared to where it was in the 2000s, but it's still, you need to have kind of that balance and kind of saying, we're going to not like, I would say, pause to the point where you're taking a siesta and just, a 5-month vacation kind of thing. No, not do anything. I'm not saying that, but just take a little bit of breathers, relax, touch grass, watch the birds chirp,
Right. I think it's really important right now for mental health purposes to not, even from a PR perspective, we have to know what's going on, but we shouldn't really immerse ourselves in the news and social doom scrolling, all of that. I mean, I think it's more important than ever. And I see people they are kind of maybe pulling back a little bit. I'd love to see some statistics on that. Like, what's the usage now versus like COVID versus now? Like, it's probably different.
Well, there's a great researcher who's actually at the University of Tampa. Her name is Brianne Martz. Her whole dissertation was on social media wellness. And she basically was like, how do you basically have this work-life balance and kind of keeping to your mental health and protecting it, but also being successful in the marketing profession in social media. And I know I have a friend, Karen Sutherland, who's down in Australia, who actually had kind of this wellness course that she taught in social media. And so it is important. It absolutely. And that's why I make sure every day that Mando makes sure that I walk several miles a day because he needs his exercise. So that's good for me, but it's important to kind of have balance, across the board, because if you don't, then it really does impact, your day-to-day activities.
Yeah. We just, we have, like I said, it's a question. I actually want to have somebody on to talk about the big question that we need to understand, like how do we find that balance for ourselves? Meet our professional, requirements while still taking care of our own, mental health and well-being.
I mean, my solution is coffee, but I don't know that for everybody.
That creates more anxiety.
But well, my extended family is Swedish, and so coffee is like part of our bloodline. I mean, I feel like it's a major food group, but no, I think having balance and figuring out, I think also too, figuring out what works for you in that balance is also crucial. Like, because that could be similar or different to every person. So that's kind of like the $1 million question right there, Michelle. So if you get someone on your show, definitely let me know. I'll be like, okay, I'm going to tune in. So.
I'm trying to find a person, the right person for that. So yeah. I think it's a big question right now, but and I don't think it's going to change this year. So.
No. Well, and I think what you might maybe want to do is maybe have a panel, have people from different places, like maybe have a practitioner, have an academic, and then maybe a rising professional. Like, because I know with mental health and social, that's a huge topic with my students, and I do, even with the agency in my classes, I tell them, I understand that you have a life that is in my class, or this thing, the Bird's Nest is not the only thing you're doing. And so maybe getting some perspectives of what has helped them, what has worked for them, in various roles, that could also be something beneficial.
No, I'd love to talk about that. We are coming right up to our hour, and I promised I wouldn't go past an hour, and I thought we might run out of things to talk about, but we certainly did not.
No,
and we can continue, but we will leave it there. And I appreciate everyone who tuned in or who will watch this later. And I certainly appreciate your time, Karen. I enjoyed this thoroughly. So thank you so much.
No, it was great, Michelle. No, I had a wonderful time, and keep up the amazing work and what you're doing for our profession and industry. It's really wonderful. So thank you.
Well, same to you. Thank you so much. And everyone, please join us. We'll be back for 2 new episodes in March. And thanks so much for being here for another episode of PR Explored. Thanks so much.